Hey guys, welcome back to Motivational Monday. Today we've got an exciting topic. No practice, but improvement. So, what I want you to do is I want you to go home, lock yourself in your garage, shut the door, and I want you to make progress. Most people would think it's ridiculous, but let me explain. See, a lot of times people focus on only practice on the table, and they think that practice guarantees improvement. But some of the best improvements that you can make are sometimes without the table. Maybe not even physical, maybe mental improvements. So that's what I want to talk about today. But before I begin my lecture, I'm just going to give you kind of a personal story from my experience. So I was born and raised right here in Northeast Ohio. I practiced at the Canton Table Tennis Club for many years. I made decent progress playing here, playing with my robot at home, doing some fitness training, going to tournaments, and I got to a decent level. I went to Canada and I played professionally for 3 years with the national team of Canada, and these guys were 2,500, 2,600, 2,700 level, and I thought, man, I'm going to be making some good progress. And I practiced twice a day for 3 years, and I really didn't make all that much progress practicing with them. So I kind of thought, I'm a little bit washed up. I really need to just focus on coaching and going to college and other things. So I came back to Ohio, and I didn't practice very much for a year. I focused on other things as far as spending my time on other things. But one thing that I did do is I focused mental attention on table tennis. I probably spent at least 10 hours a week thinking about my game and thinking about all the things I was doing wrong when I was training in Canada and thinking about things that I needed to do to improve. Within 11 months, I went to the U.S. Nationals and I finished 5th in men's singles, qualifying me to make the U.S. national team and represent the U.S. in Japan at the World Championships, as well as winning mixed doubles at the U.S. Nationals without dropping a single game. So how's that possible? How is it possible that I practiced really, really hard for 3 years and I didn't really make progress, and then I didn't practice very much for 11 months and then bang, made the national team? So how is that possible? Well, it goes into what we're talking about today, which is the mental game. No practice, but improvement. There are some times that you've got all the right tools, you're just not using the tools well. Sometimes the tools are almost there, but they need refined. Sometimes your playing style is decent, but it doesn't exactly match your skill set. Sometimes your skill set is different, but it doesn't necessarily match your playing style. So that's what we're going to be talking today, is that with your current game, even with less practice, if you spend the time to actually think deeply about your game, you can actually play better. So, first thing is dedicated time to thinking. Oftentimes people say, well, I don't have time to sit down and think deeply upon my game for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour. Well, guess what? You got time now. The next thing is the difference between you and 2 levels up. So this is the main thing that initially you have to think to yourself. You have to think to yourself, what is the primary difference between my current level and how I'm currently playing versus players 2 levels above me? So what's 2 levels? Is it 200 points? Is it 1,000 points? What's 2 levels? Typically, from 0 to 1,000, a level is about 200 points. From about 1,000 to 2,000, a level is usually about 100 points. And then from 2,000 up, a level is about 50 points. So let's just say, for example, if you're an 1,800 player, 2 levels up might be 2,000. Okay, so sometimes people change this up and say, this is 300 points, this is 200 points, and this is 100 points. So it's not exactly a set in stone fact and figure, but you just have to grasp the concept that 2 levels above you is significantly better. Okay, so somebody who's significantly better than you, this is the main match or the main opponent that you want to think of. So somebody, let's say, that's 100 or 200 or 300 points better than you, against these particular opponents, what's the main difference between them and you? What are they doing that you're not able to do? Are they more consistent than you? Are they able to hit the ball wider than you can? Are they able to maintain their balance better? Are they able to generate more spin? Are they able to control the short game and get the first attack first? So what's the main difference between your level and their level? What's the main difference? What's the main things that are stopping you from getting to their level? That's the main thing you have to think of. The next is the details. And as I'm talking through all the details, as far as the things that you need to be able to mentally think about, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in right there on the screen. As soon as I'm done with these 12 aspects, I'll be taking your questions, okay? So when you're actually just laying there on your bed or sitting down in a chair and you're just closing your eyes and you're thinking about these details, thinking about the things that you need to improve on your game, exactly what kinds of things are you going to be thinking about? The first is each serve and the variations. So think about your serve. What serves set up your game better and what serves don't set up your game as well? What kind of variations can you give? Maybe right now you're just serving that serve short to the backhand, but could you potentially serve short to the middle? What about sharp angle to the backhand? What about short to the forehand? What about half long to the middle? Yeah, maybe that long serve you typically serve long to the forehand, but why not serve long to the middle, or why not serve off the side to the wide backhand? So think about each one of your serves individually and ask yourself the question, would it be possible that I can add some new variations of these? And out of the current variations that I currently have, which ones are doing better? Okay? A lot of people practice their serve, but not that many people actually take the time to sit down for a half an hour and actually think deeply on their serve. Yeah, they think that grabbing that box of balls and practicing is good, and it might be good, but you might be practicing the wrong serves, or you might be practicing the same variations over and over and over. Maybe you need to add some new variations. Okay? The next one is each receive and variation. So for serve return, what kind of improvements do you think you can make? Yeah, maybe you don't have a table at your house. Maybe you can't practice now, but you need to be thinking deeply as far as when I do get back to the table and I'm working on my serve return, what kind of variations can I give? Maybe you're playing backhand banana flip, but it's always the slow version. You don't have the fast version. Maybe you know how to push short, but maybe you don't have the ability to control your push half long. Maybe you always push with spin, but have you ever considered pushing with no spin? Maybe you always flip very, very fast cross court, but how good are you at variation flips down the line or against middle? Okay, so these are some things that you can be thinking about. So go through each way that you return serve, whether it be long push with backhand or short push with backhand or side spin push with backhand or forehand loop against half long serves. Go through each one of your serves in your mind with your eyes closed and just ask yourself, how can I make improvements on these? Before I go into the next point, I just also have to mention, it's not just table tennis, but all professional sports require this type of mental training. There's been hundreds, if not thousands of studies that have been done as far as the mental game of table tennis or the mental game of any sport, being able to really close your eyes and picture that in your head. If you can picture it in your mind, why is that sometimes better than actually practicing? Because when you picture it in your mind, you can get it right. When you go there and you practice, a lot of times you're practicing bad habits again and again and again. How are you going to overcome these bad habits if you keep practicing the bad habits? A lot of times making changes on the table starts by making changes in your mind. If mentally you can picture yourself doing it right hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, it will carry over to the match. Okay? The next thing is third ball attack. So for third ball attack, what kind of variations are you currently giving? Are you mainly playing third ball attack with forehand? Are you playing with backhand? Are you usually letting the ball drop to the floor and playing heavy spin to the backhand? Or are you sometimes playing earlier timing and fast attack to the middle? For third ball attack, are you always playing straight topspin? Or are you able to add side spin to it as well? Okay. So what kind of variations could you be giving on your third ball attack? Fifth ball attack, which is the next ball. Maybe you're great at a serving, you're great at third ball attack, but maybe you're not that good at fifth ball attack. What do you have to do differently? Do you have to learn to adjust your body position and your timing based on the quality of shot that you gave? See, if you give a third ball attack that's slow and spin and arc and short, that's much different than a third ball attack that's slow and spin and arc and deep. If you go for more spin or less spin, or deeper or faster or wider, that changes their block or their counter loop, and therefore your fifth ball attack has to be different as well. Okay? Fourth ball attack or fourth ball shot, that's after you return the serve and they hit that next ball. Sixth ball attack, that's after you return the serve, they hit, and then you hit, they hit, and then you hit again. That's called the sixth ball. When I'm talking about sixth ball, I'm talking about the sixth time the ball is touched. So if this is the table here, and this is the guy serving, and he serves, this is 1, this is 2. When he hits back, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, and that's 6. So every time the ball is touched, that's considered a number, okay? So when we're talking about sixth ball, we're talking about the sixth ball, the sixth time the ball is touched. A lot of times people will miss on the sixth ball, or the seventh ball, or the eighth ball, or ninth ball, or 10th ball, and they'll say, well, I need to improve that shot. It's true, they need to improve that shot, but sometimes you have to look back and you have to say, did that err on the 10th ball? Did that start from a poor serve return or a poor third ball attack? So when you're thinking about these rallies, think a little bit more in depth as opposed to just thinking, well, I missed that wide forehand. Well, what caused you to miss that wide forehand? This is really not easy. I would say this is one of the toughest things to do, is to actually discipline yourself to sit down with your eyes closed and be able to actually play out these types of points. And instead of just playing out how you currently play out in your mind how you want to play and how realistically, with your physical abilities, your age, with everything that you've got as far as your skill set, how are you going to take those abilities and play them into a match? If you can picture it in your mind, this is a good start. But a lot of times people don't take the time to do it, like I said. But right now, when you're on lockdown and everybody's stuck at home, now is the time to discipline yourself to do that. All right, a couple more here, and then I'll be taking your questions. Next thing to think about is your distance from the table. There's 3 general distances, like very close to the table, more top of the bounce, and then further from the table. So what style do you currently play? And is this distance from your table, is this best for your style? So for example, if you don't move well to cover the really wide balls, then why are you playing 7 feet off the table? Because the court now got wider. Or let's just say you play good with like very, very slow, heavy spin. Why are you playing right off the bounce where you're ricocheting the ball off the bounce? Maybe you should step back a little bit more, allowing you to juice up the spin more. So the distance from the table, is it appropriate for your style? And you might say, but I don't know what distance I should be playing. Well, that's where coaching comes in. So try to get some advice or some coaching, and then also watch some world-class players. Pick out a world-class player that is playing a similar style to you, and just say, hey, how does that person play? After they do the third ball attack from here, how do they respond with the fifth ball attack from here? Do they stay close and play early timing? Do they step back and play top of the bounce? How do they respond? So if you don't know for yourself, get advice, and also look for a world-class player that's also able to play, that's playing similar style to you, and see what they do in that situation. Next thing is common patterns. What common patterns do you currently play, and what common patterns should you be implementing into your game? Next thing is best wins. Okay? I know maybe you beat that guy that's this and this and this rating, and you beat this guy that's this and this and this rating. I don't care about ratings. What I want to know is, from your best wins of your career, let's say the top 10 wins, how did you play? Was there a particular style that you played, or was there a particular style that your opponent played? Maybe you played unusually great against these particular opponents. How can you take those characteristics of how you played against those particular styles and apply those principles to other opponents? Hey, maybe that day you were a little bit faster. Instead of letting the ball drop, you were playing the ball more top of the bounce and you were driving through the loop stronger. Maybe that was a common characteristic. Maybe instead of going for powerful shots, you are using more ball placement, you were working the point, trusting your rallies, and then maybe going for it occasionally as opposed to forcing the issue to go for explosive shots every single time. So think to yourself, on your best wins, forget about the ratings, playing style. What style were they playing and what style were you playing? Okay. What about worse losses? Yeah, I know you lost to that guy that was rated this and that, and he got a bunch of nets and edges in the 7th game. I get that. I hear that all the time. But what style did he play? Was he the type of player that chopped really, really heavy and deep to your backhand and you made a lot of errors? Was he the type of player that served no spin to your forehand, and then after you flipped, he was able to attack fast to your middle? What style did he play? As you learn to analyze what went wrong on these matches, you'll learn to fix your own problems. See, you not only need to be an expert at how you play well, you have to be an expert on your weak points. If I ask you to write a 50-page paper today on how to beat you, how to beat yourself, you should be able to do it. You should be able to understand your game inside and out. and just jumping on the table and just practicing and not taking this time to actually think about it is not the best way. And as I said in the beginning today, this is when I made the most progress, is when I actually spent less time practicing and actually more time deeply considering my own game and being able to think through these types of things. All right, our last two, mental game. So, what is your mental response when you're playing well? What kind of routine do you have before the game begins? When you're playing well, what kind of response do you have between points? Are you excited? Are you jumping up and down? Are you calm? And what kind of mental game should you force yourself to have in the future? See, you do have control over your own mental abilities. You have the control whether to chow loudly, or whether to kick the barrier, or whether to just quietly stay calm and reassure yourself what to do. You have control over your own mental game, and this is something you have to be able to do, is you've got to paint the picture of what mental approach helps you play your best. And the last thing, number 12, training for the future. So, if you're going to be really, really, really efficient at doing this, it's not just thinking through all these different aspects of your game and making lists of hundreds of things you need to improve. But when you get back to the training hall, when you get back to the academy, when you get back to playing on the table, is this going to affect how you train? When I was in Canada, I was practicing up to 6 hours a day, and I was doing up to 2 or 3 hours a day fitness training. It was crazy, and I wasn't making much progress. When I got home to Ohio, I literally spent 11 months thinking about my game. And I would think about my game sometimes up to a couple hours a day. Thinking about my game, not practicing very much, playing a little bit in my basement with the robot. I did do some tournaments, not practicing very much, but the training that I did have was really efficient because I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I knew why I wasted 3 years of my life training like a beast in Canada without making much progress. So the training that I did do during that 11 months was probably the best training of my life. It was very efficient, and it actually helped me to make the national team without practice. All right, thank you for bearing with me today. I am now interested in taking some of your questions. So I've got about 5 more minutes before I got to take off, but I'm going to go and check the screen to see if you've submitted any questions. If you haven't submitted any questions, make sure you go ahead and do that right now, and I'll be sure to answer them. It's good to see you, Bill White, and Raj, and Megan, Eric, Kevin, it's good to see you guys. Rhonda, Bob Chen. All right. So we have a question. I think it's from Megan or Chester, one of the two. It says, you know my style, my skill level. If I want to watch a couple players on YouTube to help my game, who would you recommend for me? That is a great question. And I'm going to answer it as it regards to Chester. And if it's Megan that wants the answer, I can mention a few things about Megan as well. Okay, it is Megan that asked the question. Excellent. All right, so in the beginning, like when you're first starting out as a beginner, because Megan, you're more of a beginner level. You're more like a 500 or 600 level player. So in the beginning, at your level, you don't have a specific style. So you're going to be looking at more generalities of a lot of players as opposed to specifics for one particular player, or 2 particular players, or 3 particular players. So when you're watching world-class players, your style doesn't actually match any of theirs, but you look for generalities. What are they doing differently that I'm currently doing? How are their knees bent? In their ready position, how far in front is their racket? As soon as they hit the ball, are they stopping their feet or are they moving for the next ball? As soon as they come in for the short ball, do they come in and stop, or do they come in and come back? Do they bring the hand back? Do they keep the hand forward? What do they do? So you're looking more for generalities as opposed to choosing a specific style. But because I know your game and because you take Skype lessons, I'm going to say your best style is playing close. Playing close will allow you to have the best control over the table, and your goal is to push the opponent off the table. It also allows you to cover less distance. In a recent study of table tennis, let's say this is the court here, and this is the table here in the middle. The average player, these dots represent how much court they cover. the average elite player, those are the footprints. The average elite player covers 2.49 miles, 2.5 miles of court in an elite match. So in an elite match, 4 out of 7, they cover 2.5 miles of court. So the further back you get from the table, Megan, say you're back here, back here, back here, now the more distance you have to cover. And since footwork is still, let's say, an area that still needs some improvement, I would recommend staying close. But great question. All right, let me see if any other questions have been submitted. Hey, I got a few more. That's good. I love hearing questions. I've heard recently from 2 top players that during a match they focus on making their opponents feel as uncomfortable as possible during the match. How do you feel about this in your game, and how do you utilize this philosophy? So there's basically 2 aspects. There's the aspect of, are you doing your best to be consistent, to produce a quality shot, to move well, to stay balanced, to get that positioning right? And are you doing a good job throwing weapons at the opponent? Are you doing a good job of putting pitfalls in the opponent's way from variations or shot placement or speed shots here, off speed balls here to make the opponent mess up? So at the more of the beginner level, your focus as you're developing your game is more on your own end. How well can I adjust? How well can I do many different things? As you get better and you have to focus less on your own technique, then you're focusing more on specific tactics to beat the opponent. So I would say, yes, Mike Boyd, if you're at a higher level, like a world-class level, the focus is more on setting traps for the opponent as opposed to focusing on your own basic technique. Table tennis is not a sport that you can hit a grand slam or you can make a three-pointer. Table tennis is a sport that you actually cannot earn a point. The only way to get a point is if the opponent misses. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is after the basic technique is good, no matter how pretty your technique is, no matter how consistent you are, you always have to think about throwing variations at your opponent to cause them to make mistakes. Great questions. I see a couple more questions came through. Ryan Day says, what are some great footwork drills? I find myself out of position sometimes. This is a great question, Ryan. There's different types of footwork drills. There's systematic, which is where there's a system or a pattern. There's semi-systematic, which is semi-patterned, and then there's random. Oftentimes, if you're out of position, you need to ask yourself the question, is my footwork correct? Am I bending my knees? Am I on my toes, slightly on the inside of my feet? Am I moving correctly? If you are moving correctly and you're oftentimes out of position, then you need to ask yourself the question, am I doing a good job at watching the opponent? Watching his racket angle, watching his timing to see where it's going. Because if you're waiting till after the ball leaves his racket and then you're chasing the ball over there, or you're waiting till after it leaves his racket and you're chasing the ball over there, you're probably already too late. The sooner you can see where the ball's going and move and make adjustments with your feet, the easier it's going to be. But I always remind people, don't take your hand back until you actually see the incoming ball. If you see them going there, or you see them going there or going there, make sure you're making adjustments with your feet, but don't take your hand back until you see the ball. Okay? Good. Great question. All right. I've got a question from Diana. It says, what are some recommendations for me being a PIPS player? All right. Good question. So, think through all of these things. Think through every one of your serves, Diana, and ask yourself, each serve that I'm doing, which is the one that sets up my game the best, and how can I make that serve better? What other variations can I give? What about serve return? So I can't just make a generality for you and just say, all PIPS players must do this better. It doesn't work like that. There's hundreds, if not thousands of details you can learn, and this whole lecture is about you thinking about your own game. Because even if I'm able to give you a tip and you say, yeah, I'm going to get it, oftentimes these tips don't stick. Oftentimes you work on it for a week and then kind of drift away and forget it. These details that you learn on your own, but with deep thinking, when you're actually closing your eyes and you're actually picturing it in your mind, these details will stick with you longer. Because as I've said many, many times before in other videos, knowledge that is self-learned sticks longer. All right, we've got a question from Rhonda. It says, I am strength training while not playing table tennis. What strengths can I focus on without ruining my table tennis arm? Great question. So this particular topic today is more on mental training and being able to actually picture it in your mind. As far as strength training goes, I would definitely recommend for you, Rhonda, not doing too heavy of weights, but making sure that it's lighter weights. And then also make sure that you focus quite a bit on core training and leg training. See, a lot of times people think, well, I missed that shot, or I'm not swinging hard enough here. A lot of mistakes don't come from the hand, it actually comes from the lower body, from the feet, being able to get in position. So if you're able to move better, and you're able to get there better, and you're able to implement more core rotation with backhand and forehand both, it's going to help your stroke a lot. So instead of just focusing just on the arm, focus a little bit more on the core and the legs. Fitness Friday is a good time to do that. Every Friday at 1 o'clock through our YouTube channel, we do about a 25-minute workout on Fitness Friday. All right, I've got about time for about one more question, and then I'm going to be wrapping up here. All right, guys. So just as a conclusion, I'm just going to kind of wrap up with a couple closing thoughts. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me a message, and I'll get back to you on it. There was a recent study from Harvard a few years back, and this study studied different brain activity for people playing piano. Okay? They were playing piano, and they brought them back the next week, and they wanted to see what's the difference in the brain activity when they're just picturing themselves playing piano and they're just listening to it in their head. So they took them into an empty room. There was no piano, nobody was playing, and they just said, okay, I want you to play the piano in your head. There was the same type of brain activity going on when they were picturing it in their mind as when they were actually playing. So without even playing piano, it was stimulating their brain to actually get better. Same thing is true for bodybuilders. Bodybuilders, sometimes they have accidents, they have injuries just like everybody else. And so they studied some bodybuilders that were in a hospital a few years ago, and they're just laying there in the bed. Muscles are atrophying, they're not doing anything at all. And they said, I want you to have 1 hour weightlifting sessions in your head. And without weights, no weights in sight, they just closed their eyes and they just went through a whole weightlifting routine in their mind. What do you think happened? All their muscles started getting stronger. Why? Because they were actually lifting weights? No, because they were stimulating their mind. So right now, with everybody on lockdown, a lot of people say, well, I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do that. What can you do? Right now, you have plenty of time. I know that. You have plenty of time, and you have a mind. You have a quiet room somewhere in your house, hopefully. And so I want you to take, let's start with 20 minutes a day. Take one of these topics and think about one of these topics for 20 minutes a day. Go into a dark room, close your eyes, and just think about your serve return. And ask yourself the question, what can I do to improve my serve return? No, I can't practice right now, but when I get back to practice, what am I going to do differently? I've been playing for 13 or 15 or 20 years, making the same mistakes, returning the same serves poorly. What can I do better? How can I do better visualizing the contact point from the incoming ball? How can I do better reading the opponent's side of the table? How can I do better watching the ball as it hits my side and goes over? How can I do better with actually reading the actual spin on the ball? How can I do better with adjusting my racket starting position? How can I do better with the action or feel on the ball? How can I do better at placing the ball well and then recovering for the next ball and the next ball and the next ball? 20 minutes for one is really not excessive. I think if you really stretch